Jefferson, just a guy, and Louisiana Buy. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is October the 22nd, 2020. And I'm going with this date in history from Monday because for an American history class, while I could talk to you today about the Stamp Act, it's much more important for us to hit the milestone that was Monday, and that was the victory by the Continental Army in the Battle of Yorktown. Okay, and in that battle, the United States won its independence. That's the day that we should be celebrating every year for American independence. So, the hat kind of helps make the argument, doesn't it? Happy real Independence Day 3 days ago, and 239 years. Now, if you remember on the last episode of Notes, we talked about how Jefferson was elected. There was a tie, and it was between him and Aaron Burr. And eventually, Congress will agree to put Jefferson into the presidency on the condition that he accepts Alexander Hamilton's financial plan. Okay, so that's a pivotal moment for Jefferson, because in order for him to do that, you have to remember he was so diametrically opposed to Hamilton's financial plan that he began the first political party, the Democratic Republicans or the Jeffersonian Republicans. You can use both terms for that. But, Jefferson was such a controversial figure because people had found out that within his library he has a Quran, that they think that Christianity's in trouble. And so many people started to hide their Bibles in wells or bury their Bibles so that Jefferson couldn't get to them. Okay, so in the South they allowed universal white male suffrage, and under his presidency they would double the size of the U.S. through obtaining the Louisiana Territory. So Jefferson, a person who basically goes against his political beliefs to try and do what was best for the nation. Okay, so one thing that was really different between Jefferson and Adams and Washington was the fact that Jefferson was a bachelor. His wife Martha had died years earlier, and as a result, that really has a major effect on your attitude and how you are as a person also. But instead of having a first lady or wife to help plan the dinner parties, which was the role of the first lady for such a long time, Jefferson basically just went with a first come first serve. When you come into the White House, whoever gets there first sits where they want to. And it's a real slap in the face to diplomats from both Britain and France. Okay. Also, since he is a single man, go and visit some of your single friends' apartments some point and look how they dress and how they take care of the place unless they have a visitor coming over. If they have a visitor coming over, it completely changes the dynamics of everything. But the truth is, most of the time they dress like a hobo and are very hobo-esque. So anyway, he sent messages to Congress because of his weak speaking voice. By the way, he was 6'2", just like Washington, but he only weighed about 140 pounds, and Washington weighed right around 200. So, they might have been the same height, but they weren't the same build. He changed the period to wait for citizenship from 14 years to 5. And the year before Great Britain outlawed slavery, the United States outlawed the importation of new slaves from Africa. If you want to call that, I guess that's a step forward, I guess. He hired Albert Gallatin as Secretary of the Treasury, and he reduced Albert Gallatin reduced the national debt by 40%. Okay. Philosophically, he was a little bit different than Hamilton. You know. By the way, I don't know if I ever told you about when Jefferson resigned from uh, from the cabinet under Washington. You know, he had major problems with Hamilton, and he went in and wasn't expecting a fight, but really got himself into a fight once he got there. Uh, so there, Jefferson kicks open the door and has his letter of resignation. He catches Washington off guard. They go and they fight and they struggle, and as they do, things get really personal and things keep moving forward into a very violent realm. Uh, Eventually, Washington, who was about 20 years older than Jefferson, because of several pains, several pains from several battles he fought in, falls to the ground, and Jefferson grabs a sword and goes to slit Washington's throat, and Washington, is thinking, oh my God, once he does this, he's going to get my wife, and so, right before Jefferson's about to strike him down, he goes, save Martha. And Jefferson's taken aback because he just had recently lost his wife Martha, and he was like, "Why would you say her name?" And he was like, "Save Martha." And so Jefferson stumbles back and he drops the sword, and he goes, "Of course, Martha, your wife, not his wife." And then they go off together to fight Lex Luthor. Crap! I think I just combined two different stories. Okay, well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Sorry about that. My bad. Okay, so the Judiciary Act of 1801. This creates 16 new federal judge positions. And on Adams' last night in office, he goes ahead and fills all 16 of these positions. Now, what he's trying to do is protect all of his ideals. Okay? Basically, protect the Federalist platform. And this is a right of the president, regardless of what you may think, and by the way, I've seen both of those arguments in the last 12 years. In George Bush's last term or last year in office, there was a position available in the Supreme Court, and the Democrats said you can't fill it. The Republicans said you can. Then 8 years later, you have the exact same thing happen, except the sides had changed. Okay? And now there's another question of an appointment, Even if you think the president's a garbage president, unfortunately, those are the powers for every president. So if you give it to someone you love, you also have to give it to someone you hate. So keep that in mind. Jefferson calls them the midnight judges, and he actually will try and remove one of the judges, a Marbury. And so this will bring up the Supreme Court case, Marbury versus Madison. Now, it doesn't really matter what the outcome of the trial is, because the reason that this is significant, and this is extremely significant, you will see this on a quiz question and a test question, and at this point we're not planning on having a semester exam that covers the entire semester. But if we did, this would definitely be a question that would make it onto that. Okay? And Marbury versus Madison creates judicial review, the ability to decide if issues clash with the Constitution. Every ruling before and after is affected by this. This is by far the most important court case in the history of the Supreme Court. So, and by the way, that ruling was made by John Marshall on the left-hand side. We will talk about him more once we get done with the War of 1812. So I think in about 2 class days, maybe. So next time we meet, but the time after that, I believe. And if I'm wrong, then I'm not right. So let's look at impeachment, okay? So, the sexy beast on the left is Samuel Chase, okay? The term impeachment itself, there's a lot of question on what this means. Okay, impeachment doesn't mean you're removed from office. It means they try and remove you from office. Okay, As far as Supreme Court justices, we've only had one impeached, and we've had 3 presidents impeached. Okay? The 3 presidents impeached were Andrew Johnson, who we'll get to right before Christmas, William Jefferson Clinton, also known as Bill Clinton to you, and now Donald John Trump has also been impeached. None of them have been removed from office. Nixon was almost impeached, but he quit before they could do it. And now you have Samuel Chase. Samuel Chase was a real piece of crap. Nobody liked him. Okay? How he got into the Supreme Court, I'm not really sure. I believe he was pretty fair, just a horrible person to be around. So he's brought up on impeachment charges, and he's found not guilty. Because even though someone is a piece of crap and a jerk, that's not illegal. You just, shouldn't be that kind of person. It was the last time a Supreme Court justice was brought up on charges, however. So now it's time to move on to Sally Hemmings. Sally Hemmings was a half-sister of Martha Jefferson. They both had the same father. And she was also Jefferson's slave and Martha's father's slave. Okay? So she was the half-sister of Martha Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson had an affair with her. As much as you can have an affair with your own slave. I don't know if they had, tender love and it was a real love story and he kept her as a slave so that he could always keep her around, or if it was just convenient to engage in physical love with your slave. I don't know what the story is there, but I really can't give any props at all to Thomas Jefferson, who even whenever he has 5 children with Sally Hemings. Okay? He has 5 children with Sally Hemings, and then whenever he dies, he doesn't free Sally or any of his 5 children. Okay? Whatever you may think, I almost think the world would have been a better place had Jefferson died, like July 10th of 1776, like a week after the Declaration of Independence, because of crap like this. So the press goes to attack him for, sleeping with his slave and, all the other things along with that. And he just doesn't say anything. And some people call him a master genius of controlling the press. But that's, sometimes just answering the question would be a lot better. So she did live with him in the White House. Not that she would normally sleep in his room, but, she did make her way up there several times. Well, anyway, so moving on. The Tripolitan War. So, the Tripoli Pasha, or the king of Tripoli, which is Libya today, he goes, captures, and enslaves U.S. sailors and demands a high ransom from the United States for their return. And the U.S. is insulted with this, so they send out a mosquito fleet. Okay, a bunch of small ships. And these small ships, with all their cannons on them, are so maneuverable, they helped beat the Pasha's navy, and they were able to get all the sailors returned without having to pay anything for them. This becomes an important moment for the Marines, and because I don't know if you know the Marine fight song, okay, but it starts off with, "From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles on the land and on the sea." So Tripoli really becomes one of the first lines of the Marine fight song, okay? And you have to remember, the Marines predate even the Declaration of Independence by 1 year. They and the Navy both do. So, very proud heritage. My son is going into the Army. He leaves for boot camp on November the 2nd. In the Army, not the Marines, but still, I respect all of our armed forces. I never served my time, so, I wouldn't criticize anyone who does. Anyway, that's my youngest son, Zach. My older son, Cross, right now he's not going into the army. He's got a different path. Anyway, oh happy day. So let's talk really about the Treaty of San Ildefonso. Okay, this is a secret agreement between Spain and France, and Spain agrees to return Louisiana Territory, which it had held for 37 years, if they get back some land in Italy, which, France didn't really care about at that moment anyway. Now, one thing that I want to point out in this portrait right here, that is a portrait of Napoleon. And for the rest of this semester, you're going to see a large number of people with their hands in their cloaks. Okay, so their hands are in their cloaks, and they're not touching their stomach or doing anything weird. Well, actually, I don't know what the crap they're doing, but this is all an homage or a tribute of respect to Napoleon. Okay, part of putting your hand in your shirt means that you generally have some amount of military experience, especially as an officer, and this is your way of saying that you're familiar with Napoleon and you probably studied his tactics. So whenever you see this for the rest of the semester, this is where this comes from. So this leads to this great event. Okay, so James Monroe is sent to France to buy New Orleans and any other land they could get for $10 million. Here's $10 million. Buy New Orleans and whatever else you can get. We wanted this trading center. It was very important over in the New World. And Napoleon at this point thought that, this entire Louisiana Territory region, was, something that they probably weren't going to use. And he needed money because they were going to war with Great Britain. So they decided to sell it for $15 million. Okay? So they offered him $15 million in exchange for the big green territory to the left. That amount of territory would essentially double the size of the United States. Okay, 828 million acres, about 3 cents an acre is what we would end up paying. Now, the problem is the Constitution doesn't say anything about adding territory. So is this something that Jefferson could legally do? Because one of the things that he really fought whenever he was Secretary of State against Hamilton was this idea of implied powers. You could basically do anything you wanted to if you could in any way justify it. And so this is another one of those moments where he has to go against everything he believes in to try and do what's best for the nation, which I do respect on the one hand, but he also had an opportunity to do so much more that he just kind of, wastes. So ultimately, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but he makes the purchase. So to explore this new land, okay, to explore this land, so Jefferson sends out two explorers, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. Okay, Meriwether. Don't name your children Meriwether. That's just rude. William Clark, though, you've heard of him and his family before. If you remember in the last unit, we talked about George Rogers Clark, the man who helped seize forts in the Ohio River Valley, and he killed the natives to show them that the British couldn't protect them. Yeah, I'm not saying it's good reasoning. Well, this is the younger brother of George Rogers Clark. So these two men, along with several other people and their guide, whose name was Sacagawea, she was a Shoshone Indian who spoke around 7 different dialects of Native American languages. They go out to explore Louisiana. Now, remember, they're supposed to go and explore 828 million acres. And they accidentally go past it by 500 miles until they get to the Pacific Ocean. I don't know if I told you earlier, but explorer doesn't mean that you know where you're going. It means that you can kind of tell people where you accidentally went. So to be a good explorer didn't mean you had to know where you were, just where you accidentally went. Their mistake, however, helps give the U.S. a claim to Oregon and the Oregon Territory. So kudos to Lewis and Clark. Uh, and I know that many of you know that the Land of Lakes Butter Girl is supposed to be Sacagawea, and I'm sorry. Uh, she is so much more attractive than Sacagawea there. I don't know if you knew this. It's not three guys and a baby. It's not like the new version of Three Men and a Baby or the old version. That's Sacagawea there. And I know you're thinking that's really sexist, but I grew up looking at the Land O'Lakes Butter Girl and thought, wow, Sacagawea was really cute. And then I see this image of her and I think, oh my, that dude had a baby. I guess I'm a monster. Well, I guess on a separate note, I'm going to move forward before I just really completely. Oh, there I am. So, James Wilkinson. Okay, this guy is someone that they should make a movie about because he's pretty interesting. He was a general during the American Revolution, and he actually will later serve as a triple agent, not just a spy, not a double agent, but a triple agent. He was a spy for the U.S. in Louisiana Territory, where he was a military governor once once the U.S. bought Louisiana. So he was there. He actually went there before we bought the territory and served as a spy. France realized pretty quickly that he was a spy, so they turned him, and so he was spying for France. Now we found out that he was spying, for France against us, so then we turned him once again. Now it is possible he was a quadruple agent, okay, but I'm not even really sure how that would work. Okay, so a double agent would mean, okay, so if I'm a spy for Great Britain, that means that I'm spying on Great Britain for the United States, but Britain knows that, so now I'm spying on the U.S. for Great Britain. And the way that would work is I would report what I see about Great Britain to the United States, but Great Britain would tell me which information to leak to the United States. So that's how it'd be a double agent. Okay? I guess a triple agent would be, okay, so the U.S. knows that Britain's leaking information to me, the information they want. So in addition to that information, they would also be sending me the information that I wanted. Okay? And then they would be reporting back with the information that I wanted for them to give to Great Britain. It's all a little bit dizzying, but he launches several different schemes to take land from Mexico, the Louisiana Territory, and from Texas to start new nations because he wants to be that founding father that he couldn't be in the United States. They send out Zebulon Pike. By the way, Zebulon, as terrible as a name as Meriwether is, Zebulon is a great name. So they send out Zebulon to find the source of the Mississippi River. Okay? And the source of the Mississippi River is actually in Mississippi, not Mississippi, in Minnesota. So instead, he goes about 700 miles in the wrong direction to end up in Colorado. And he's captured by the Spanish. He explores the Colorado Rockies, and they actually name one of the highest peaks, Pikes Peak, after him. While he's captured, he sees a map, and he makes himself a copy of the map. And this map, which was one of the better ones of North America, was still extremely inaccurate. But this map is later a copy is stolen of Pike's map and published, and someone steals a copy of that map and publishes, and someone steals a copy of that map. The fifth generation of these maps by Disternell is actually used in the treaty of the Mexican War between the U.S. and Spain, and it's so inaccurate that they have to sign another treaty 5 years later. So, a lot of map talk there, and I'm sorry to everyone, but sometimes those type of things happen, and you have to talk about a lot of maps. Map, 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 map. Let me see your map. Map, 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 map. Now we're moving on to Aaron Burr. Many of you are probably much more familiar with Aaron Burr as a result of the play Hamilton. Okay, but there's much more to Aaron Burr's life than just the fact that he killed Hamilton in a duel, which, you know. Well, anyway, so Aaron Burr was one of the founding fathers. Remember, he was the vice president to Jefferson, and he was so enraged by the fact that he lost, even though he kind of helped agree to the deal, that he ends up, while he's vice president of the United States, running for the governor of New York. And at one point, he tries to take New York and New England and form a new nation. And you're going to find this to be a recurring theme in this unit, because this is done also during the Civil War. Not the Civil War, during the War of 1812. Sorry, sometimes I misspeak. Ah, dang it. Nah, I'm not really. Anyway, so I messed up. So anyway, during the War of 1812. So when he's trying to do this and he's running for the governor of New York, Hamilton exposes his plan and says, you know what, you're a traitor. Because, if you're trying to start your own nation in the nation that you're in, that does make you a traitor. I don't know if you know that, but you don't normally start your own nation within the nation that you're in. So, at this point, Burr challenges Hamilton to a duel. They go and they march their 10 paces and turn around, and Hamilton actually turns around, but he's doing this more as a sign of honor that he's doing this, and instead of shooting Aaron Burr, he fires the gun off safely outside of where Burr was standing. Burr, though, is going to take this opportunity, and he gives Hamilton a gut shot. So Hamilton will die about 3 days later in horrible agony as, stomach acids bleeding, seeping out into his stomach, and he's, for 3 days, in brutal pain. He's charged with murder in New York and New Jersey, and eventually he's going to go and escape to Louisiana Territory that was added by the U.S. And there he makes a deal with Wilkinson to build a new empire there. And as he's on his way, messages from Washington, from Jefferson arrive, where Wilkinson is told to arrest Burr whenever he gets there. And so Wilkinson at this point knows that the jig is up, and he arrests him. Okay. They end up finding Burr not guilty on conspiracy charges, and he doesn't get in trouble for killing Hamilton. Jefferson is asked to appear in court and testify, but he refuses, and he uses the concept of executive privilege to avoid testifying. Now, this is something that will come back up in April whenever we talk about Nixon, because Nixon does not want to testify, and he uses executive privilege, that was created by Jefferson, and the whole thought was, as the leader of the free world, or as the leader of the country, if you're forced to testify, you could give away information that would be bad for the national security of the United States. Eventually, Nixon won't be able to enjoy this privilege, but Jefferson and some other presidents in the time period between them will get to use that. To the Embargo Act of 1807. Okay? And Jefferson didn't like the fact that Britain and France were fighting. He was afraid we were going to be drawn into a conflict, so he decided to cut off trade with everyone. And by everyone, I mean every nation in the world we refused to trade with. Which is really a stupid idea because, the rest of the world wasn't a problem, and we needed all the money that came from it. Okay? But he thought the rest of the world was so dependent on raw materials from the U.S. and U.S. foods that they would, that they would give in and, basically either go to peace or, treat the United States better. So this is really bad, particularly for New England, because this is where, a lot of goods came in, and that's how a lot of people in New England made their money. And so Uh, Accidentally, by cutting off trade with the rest of the world, uh, people were forced to try and find ways to make some of the things that they were getting from the rest of the world. And Jefferson accidentally creates the foundation of U.S. industries. Now, when we were talking about Burr's scheme to start his own nation, I told you that it was something that happened other times, and here's another example of it, and that's Essex Junto. Okay, Essex Junto was a federalist scheme where several New England states would form a separate nation. Now, of course, this fails, but there's a lot of people, especially during this time period, who thought that there were really two separate United States. Okay, you had New England, which was a wealthy trading area, that could trade with the rest of the world. And then you had the backward South with plantations and farms that were mainly there for cotton, that didn't have the trading power of the Bank of New York, the Bank of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, or Boston and its trade center. That really you should have two separate nations, and that almost comes to fruition several times. And several Northerners during the Civil War thought, who cares? We should have been split from them a long time ago. We're much more prosperous up here. We're industrialized. They're backwater hillbilly farmers. And it hurt people's feelings. I forgot to mention that part. So many feelings hurt. Impressment. Who in here wants to be impressed? Oh, you just volunteered for the legalized kidnapping of U.S. sailors. You have to remember this is a time where everyone still sounds British. We're slowly developing our own American accents, and as you know, you don't have a uniform accent across the United States. But the British would go next to a U.S. ship, and they'd be like, "Hello, cheerio, Governor. Oh, top of the morning to you." And it'd all be with British accents. They're like, obviously, you are under arrest. You're back in the British Navy. It's like, but I'm not British. And they're like, come on over here. You can have some biscuits while we put you back into service. And the British were so harsh on their own people that many of them escaped the first chance they got. And about it's believed that somewhere around 10,000 British sailors would defect to the United States whenever they were in port in the United States, just because they could make so much more money on U.S. merchant ships versus the British, and the U.S. merchant ships did not whip them for everything they did wrong. There's a lot of whipping going on. Okay, now because this is going on, you're going to have some people that want revenge. 6,000 Americans are kidnapped during that time. And so there's war hawks in the United States. These are members of Congress from the South who wanted to go to war with Great Britain. Okay, they didn't have as much to lose as the Northerners who needed England for trade and were like, oh, who cares? They were probably British to begin with. Okay, so for the Southerners, it was much more of a sign of honor that we weren't doing anything than the Northerners who just wanted to keep trading and weren't really concerned. So, the USS Chesapeake. This is a one of the U.S. ships, and the British go alongside. They find a U.S. battleship, and they believe that there are some that there are some British sailors on the ship, and so they go and they demand that the return of their sailors who say there's no one here that's one of your sailors. And so they attack the ship, they kill 3 U.S. sailors, and they wound another 18. Okay? Or if you prefer, I can go with the pronunciation of they wound another 18. Anyway. So, some problems are brewing between the U.S. and Britain at this time. So in 1808, you have an election where Madison is elected over Pinckney, who helped negotiate Pinckney's treaty with Spain. Uh, so Madison is elected by large margins, and he is the shortest president in U.S. history. I don't know why I would say that, but In both 1808 and in 1812, he wins rather easily. Not quite as easily in 1812, though. And by the way, one thing you should probably pay attention to on the election maps going on from here, and you can tell in the map on the right hand side, is there's a big difference between the way that the North and South vote, and that's something that's carried on to even today. So, we have now finished the first day of Unit 3. We are over halfway through the semester. Congratulations to everyone. Okay? We will be done with the semester by Christmas. I know the school semester goes into January, and for that, I don't know that I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. So anyway, everyone have a great day. I'll see you all in just a couple of days, and until then, have a great one. On me.